Okay, so I want to speak about some of the good things, positive things about living in China. And this could be if you are here for work, or maybe you just have an extended holiday, but more likely if you're spending some time in the country for work or another purpose, business. Um, I've been to this country twice, so I think I've got quite a good vantage point to make these observations and share my experiences. So I've just taken a little checklist to help me make this video. Some things that I think are definitely pleasant and worth mentioning as good things, as positive things. Number one, safety, physical safety. Um, I think China's a pretty safe country in terms of crime. Now, it is true that no one really knows what the statistics are because the government doesn't exactly publicize them, as would be the case in other countries. And I'm not for a second suggesting that there is no violent crime in China. There is. Um, but on a day-to-day basis, the sort of crimes that we see in the UK, for example, just don't seem to happen. Violent muggings, for example, are very rare. Very rare. Um, Gang culture is almost non-existent. You do get triad activity in the big cities like Shanghai, maybe just Shanghai actually. Hunan province has something of a reputation for organized crime, and you get cities like Dongguan in the south, which have, for example, there's a serious problem with sex trafficking there. So by no means am I suggesting that China's crime free, far from it. But the sort of crimes that really make people's lives a misery in inner city areas in the West just don't seem to really happen here. Um, the chances of you being physically assaulted in China are almost non-existent. The only scenario I could see that happening is if there was someone with mental health problems who just randomly attacked you, or if you got into a heated dispute with some local and it got out of hand. But again, that is pretty rare. It has happened, but it's very rare. Um, I mean, I've known quite a large number of Westerners in this country, and none of them have ever been assaulted in China. So I would say safety, personal safety, is pretty high here. There are there are certain types of crimes you need to be wary of. Pickpocketing, like you would get in any big city in the world, that could be an issue. Sometimes you can be scammed, but it's very difficult to go to the police and say, "Oh, this vendor has overcharged me," or "This bus company has overcharged me." On a coach company. That does happen and it's frustrating. But what I find is generally safety. You feel pretty safe here. And even women, I think it's a lot safer for women than it would be in parts of South Asia. Not that I would necessarily recommend if you're a single female to go out at midnight by yourself. It's just not sensible. But I think overall it's a pretty safe country, so that definitely has to be a plus point. Because if you're living in Chicago or London or Paris these days, um, sadly, crime is a very serious problem. So, yeah, I would say China's a pretty safe country. Um, what else do we have? Low living costs. This is something you really do notice. Um, as a Westerner, the chances are you'll be paid fairly well in whatever job you're doing. And it does vary from company to company, job to job, but generally, everyday living costs in China are a lot cheaper than Western countries. The only things that are comparable price wise would be if you're buying a house, buying a car, or some everyday products such as coffee. I mean, coffee prices are about the same as you would expect in the West. So, for example, a jar of Nescafe is, I think it's 29 RMB, small jar. That's actually quite pricey, but similar to the West. But most other things, I mean, you could get an evening meal for 10 RMB. That's like, and I'll cover more about food in my video about food, but that's like £1. Um, Bus travel, 2 RMB. I mean, that's ridiculously cheap, 20 pence to go from one side of the city to another. That's unimaginable in the UK. So everyday living costs really are, you find things are pretty affordable overall. Even big journeys are really not that extortionate. They're decent prices. Of course, you get more expensive places in China as well. Um, but basically, as long as you're not going out to a KTV every night, you'll find that you can save quite a lot of money. Now, granted, when that converts back into your home currency, whether it be British pounds, Canadian dollars, American dollars, whatever it is, probably it won't translate. You'll be disappointed. But the point is, within China, you can live pretty comfortably. The only way I can see you struggling with money in this country is if you find a situation where you've lost your job because there's no welfare state in China, or if you basically a party animal and you're literally going out every single night. My city doesn't really have nightclubs, so I don't have that problem, and I wouldn't go to them if it did. Um, if you're in one of the big cities, you're probably going to be spending a bit more money and that sort of thing. But then again, the wages in the bigger cities is also higher, so that balances out, I guess. So really, that's definitely a positive point about China. You're unlikely to be struggling for money in this country if you just manage it a little bit. Um, what else do we have? Many things to see. Well, this is kind of obvious. China is a huge country. You cannot be bored in this country. I don't understand how anyone could get bored in China. Now, if you don't have a VPN with access to YouTube and Facebook, that can be quite a nuisance because you want to keep in touch with your family. But even without that, there are many things to see and do. I mean, even in a small city, I find that you just need to lap up the experience of being in another country. Even if you think you know a place, there's always something around it, a corner that you might not realize. If, like me, you enjoy photography, the Chinese are pretty relaxed about photography. You can take pictures of almost anything. So, at least in the south of China, it might be a bit different in Beijing, but that's something that, there's always something to see. There's still many ancient sites around. Not all of them were destroyed in the Cultural Revolution. There are many interesting things to see. Um, so I don't think you could get bored here. It's a fascinating country. It's very photogenic. There's some very interesting buildings, some very interesting sites, some beautiful scenery. So if you enjoy photography, it's great for that. Um, yeah, so there's always something to see in China. That's definitely a positive point. Um, and another big thing is rich culture. We talk a lot about culture in China, but it's not really a single concept. Chinese culture is quite abstract because this is a country of 56 ethnic groups, 55 minorities, the Han Chinese being by far the largest. I'm in an area where there is a high percentage of Miao and Dong people, and they have some very elaborate, very colorful costumes, some very rich traditions. And I've had the privilege to experience some of these things directly. And if you are in an area where there are ethnic minorities, I really recommend try and take opportunities to see those things, to see the sort of cultural traditions that come with them, because really it's a once in a lifetime opportunity. Even if you come back to China, you may be back in an area where that doesn't have that particular tradition. So make the most of it. I feel pretty privileged so far that I've managed to be able to do that. I've managed to, teachers have brought me to different Miao villages. I've experienced all sorts of things like rice wine drinking ceremonies. I've even witnessed a traditional Miao wedding. So it's really, it's incredible. Some of the most memorable experiences of my life have been over the last few months, I have to say. And that's something I will never forget. Very valuable experience. So wherever you are in China, uh, find out maybe what the local minorities are. Now, some of them are more in keeping with the traditions than others. I understand, for example, in the north east, the Manchus don't. They've more or less integrated with Han culture, so I'm not sure to what extent they would keep up their traditions. And certainly, many young Miao people, Zhuang people, they don't wear the costumes every day. They just dress in a normal sense, for want of a better term. So it's not always automatically obvious. But another thing I like is people are pretty open about it. They're not really politically correct about those sort of things. So, someone would openly say, "Oh, I'm a Miao minority," and they'll be happy to talk about their culture, especially young people. Um, I know students, for example, who've taken part in dance competitions this week, and they wear their beautiful costumes, and female students, and I wish them well because they had this sort of competition. And at first, I must admit, I didn't recognize one of my students because she had all the Meow outfit on, and it took me a few seconds to say, "Oh, Ming Zhe, that's you." And so that's what I would say. Basically, make the most of it. I'm sure there's other things I could say that are positive about China. There's many good things. As I discovered recently, it's possible to see pandas outside Chengdu. Most big cities have zoos. Now, you may be sensitive about zoos, and I totally understand that. I appreciate that. But if you want to see pandas, most big cities have at least two pandas in their main zoo. So, whichever province you're in, go to the capital city, um, and you'll see pandas. And that's really a memorable experience. Um, Also, another thing, you find all sorts of interesting snacks in this country, and there's huge variation with almost everything. I mean, choice. Surprisingly, for a communist country, you actually do have a lot of choice because you have like 100 different kinds of toothpaste. You have countless numbers of different types of snacks. So you're always spoilt for choice. If you try something you don't like it, it's cheap anyway, so no loss. So really, life in China can be very interesting if you look at it in a certain way. Okay, any questions I'll be happy to answer. Anyone from Buckland, hello. If you're a new teacher at Buckland, feel free to ask questions. And I hope this video has been useful. Thanks for watching.